Rome with us. I don't know if you're actually in Rome or not.
No, I'm not in Rome. I'm in Indiana.
But today we're all in Rome, in the new Rome that you are creating with the students in Notre Dame. So that's the new Rome that we are all aiming to create. So we are waiting for Mr. Serafini to arrive. So I don't know where he is.
Is he speaking first or what?
Well, if he's not arriving, I think we will start speaking first, and then we will get him. I think that's the best way to go.
Okay, all right. I'm ready.
Perfect.
So, do I share my screen?
Yes, please. I mean, obviously, let me introduce you, and then you can correct me if I am wrong of any of the introduction. Lucien Steil is a successful professor in Notre Dame University. He has a very long and successful professional career as well, and he has been one of the advocates of the movement of traditional architecture since its very beginnings. I met Lucien years ago when he was still editing a magazine called Capricci. I mean, for me, he has been quite a mentor over my life, and as he has been to many students. Lucien, I think, is one of the lighthouses in this movement. He has a incredible mindset, incredible and quite a bold attitude toward architectural design, which I love. So he's going to talk today about hands. I leave you the scene for you, Lucien.
Yeah.
Mr. Hunes, do you want to introduce yourself also? Sorry, Lucien.
Sorry, my apologies. Yes, Mr. Serafini is a manager, philosopher, and psychologist, and co-founder of the International Society of Bio-urbanism. He's an Italian professor. He has been doing quite an incredible research on bio-urbanism, biophilia, and he's going to talk about all that, providing he arrives. So, but in the meantime, let's enjoy Mr. Steil's presentation.
Before we start, may I ask for a public service announcement?
Of course.
After the session is over, do meet us. Let's meet all together in the plenary session, and we will be recognizing youth leadership in that session before we open the day for open conversation. So thank you all, and I'll see you after the session. I'll be popping in and out. I'm just making sure that everybody's talking. Lucien, why aren't you talking?
Yes. So you see my picture?
Yes, we do.
Okay. All right, dear friends and colleagues, greetings. It's a privilege and honor to be able to address the distinguished audience attending this extraordinary gathering of scholars, professionals, and students from all over the world, dedicated to the common purpose of a building culture supportive of beauty, peace, tolerance, equity, health, community, and conviviality, in the context of shared traditions of humanism, civility, and building arts. I'm delighted to offer my talk, drawing with my hand, to both reflect upon and encompass our shared ideals, and also to hopefully contribute to refresh our practice of traditional building, architecture, urbanism, and inspire transcending boundaries created by fear of change, but also by corporate compromise and revivalist habits. Thanks to the Classic Planning Institute, its director, Dr. Nir Buras, and the remarkable advisory board and participants for inviting me. Congratulations also to all the invited speakers, and thanks to the amazing event staff. Philibert Delorme was one of the most influential architects, builders, and theorists of the 16th century in France. This was a time when building crafts, design intelligence, and architecture theory still worked hand in hand, elegantly and efficiently. He created these very demonstrative allegories of the good and bad architect in the first volume of Architecture, Le Premier Tome de l'Architecture, published in 1567. On the left side, you see the bad architect. He has no eyes and no hands, and seems to err around mindlessly in the bleak landscape, with a medieval cast in the background and a rustic little hut on the right side of the setting. The good architect, on the other hand, has 3 eyes and 4 hands, so that's scary. He's seen dialoguing with a young disciple in a beautiful, lush, and ornate architecture and garden landscape. Note also the composed and dignified stature of the architect, posing with his compass, drawings, T-bar, the same tools I myself and many of my colleagues still use today. Please admire also the magnificent signature below the architect's portrait. Just note, do you see the whole image? You saw the whole
Yes.
image? Yeah,
Yes.
okay. Just note how the exquisite drawings of the Lorme's Hotel Beaulieu gently reconfigures the design, reenacting the same gestures of composing, proportioning, detailing, and designing as the architects 2 centuries earlier, and assumingly providing the same excitement, joy, and pride. Recent studies in neuroscience have highlighted the existence and importance of mirror neurons to explain this phenomenon of receptivity and reflectivity, enhancing memorization, manual emotional intelligence, dexterity, deductive effectiveness, as well as physical and mental resilience, occurring in this process of mimetic endeavors. We know, of course, that besides of the before mentioned benefits, there is an even more important one, which is happiness and delight. Drawing by hand is indeed a form of meditation, an act of mindfulness, of attention, and above all, of love. Here, a more recent and illustrious advocate of the hand, the thinking but also feeling and mindful hands. The hand of the craftsman, of the builder, of the architect, of the artist, and of all of those who shape and craft our built and living environment at all scales. But we must also not forget the hands of all of those who make, care for, foster, and help nurses, doctors, educators, chefs, farmers, and so on. Giovanni Pallasma is a remarkable pioneer of neuroscience and of a phenomenological approach in architecture. His publications are absolutely recommended. Allow me to read the following book review of The Thinking Hand from Amazon website. In our current global network culture that puts so much emphasis on the virtual and the visual, the mind and the body have become detached and ultimately disconnected. So physical appearance is idolized for its sexual appeal and its social identity, the role of the body in developing full understanding of the physical world and the human condition has become neglected. The potential of the human body as a knowing entity with all our senses as well as our entire bodily functions being structured to produce and maintain silent knowledge together, needs to be recognized. It is only through the unity of mind and body that craftsmanship and artistic work can be fully realized. Even those endeavors that are generally regarded as solely intellectual, such as writing and thinking, depend on this union of mental and manual skills. In The Thinking Hand, Giovanni Pallasma reveals the miraculous potential of the human hand. He shows how the pencil in the hand of the artist or architect becomes the bridge between the imagining mind and the emerging image. The book surveys the multiple essences of the hand, its biological evolution, and its role in the shaping of culture, highlighting how the hand-tool union and eye-hand-mind fusion are essential for dexterity and how ultimately the body and the senses play a crucial role in memory and creative work. Pallasma here continues the exploration begun in his classic work, The Eyes of the Skin, by further investigating the interplay of emotion and imagination, intelligent making, theory and life, and so on. But here I am now at my desk with my notebooks and sketchbooks. I draw and write by hand and truly cherish my sketchbooks and sketches. I tend to hoard even my most insignificant doodles and scraps. I walk, and most of my thinking happens during my walks and Flandries in either beautiful cities and landscape or less pleasant suburban scapes and the modern world. While walking, I discover the way things are. I learn about their looks, colors, textures, form, measures, their beauty or ugliness. But while drawing, I discover the hidden layers of reality and ideality. The way the world could be or ought to be. I imagine golden ages, which never existed, and ideal cities yet to come. While drawing, I'm not thinking. Like in Zen meditation, stopping to think means going beyond thinking. Drawing and writing by hands seem to induce particular moments of poetic beauty, and the sublime mess of my little studio in this magical light captures tenderly the precious moments of flow where time is suspended under the friendly gaze of the muses. Drawings can journey through time and space, and the traces they leave on their passage, so not pretending to prove anything or to convert anybody, they become part of the realm of poiesis, encompassing both the real and the ideal. Here, an ink drawing of a counter project I drew in 1982 on the background of a 17th century engraving of Luxembourg City. And to quote René Char, the poet must leave traces of his passages, not proof. I have never lost faith in drawing by hand, and I think with much emotion and sorrow of Michael Graves, who implored his doctors, please save my hands, when he was struck by a devastating paralysis following up on a tragical virus infection. The picture you see shows an early Capricci draft done with ink pen and pastel on tone paper, a table mat which is ubiquitous in the restaurants of the Adriatic coast. Many of my sketches and Capricci drawings are indeed started while waiting for the delicious food prepared by the hands of the magnificent chef of a local restaurant in Italy. Drawing by hand relates to poiesis. Poiesis indeed means to make. And according to Martin Heidegger, bringing forth, bringing into existence. Thus, both craftsmen and poets and architects, in the best sense of their activities, practice poiesis. The picture is another glimpse into my little poiesis laboratory. Drawing by hand is not a mechanical, purely physical endeavor responding to a previous intellectual stimulus, or a mental process of artistic and poetical conception. Like playing a concerto by Mozart is not just an athletic performance at hammering the keys of the piano. Drawing by hand or playing the piano is in itself the creative endeavor where poiesis emerges, involving simultaneously hand, mind, and heart, combining all senses, attention, inspiration, and revealing things seen and things unseen, as well as things remembered and things forgotten. The concerto partition is maybe the roadmap, but the piano performance is a journey in itself, as much as reality or memory can be the canvas of a journey into unknown realms of imagination. Here's some of my earliest sketchbooks, ink washes, a technique discovered serendipitously while experimenting. My relatively vague objective was to explore the composition of asymmetrical building ensembles. Using my dip pen and China ink and blue pelican ink, looking back at these early sketches, I found, however, already a lot of features which continue to haunt my later Capricci sketches and paintings. I find back familiar towers, dramatic landscapes, tormented skies, rocky beaches, stairs, courtyards, and squares. Behind the appearance of things, there are layers of other things, known or unknown. Here, a meditation of public space with some elements of public architecture like witnesses of a symbolic essence in the realm between sacredness and profane of the city's public spaces. Just note that my daughter, who was 5 years old, then added the full moon to her version of my piazza. The full moon became an enormous essential and indispensable feature of my Capricci drawings. Note also that she sits the figure, the human figure, at the table, whereas in my drawing the figure sits kind of a little bit lonely on the steps. I consider my drawings and sketches as notes of a journey, of a grand tour, or little Flandries through the streets and alleys of my knowing and not knowing. The journeys have often incomplete roadmaps, expired credit cards, and unreadable train or ship tickets, and sometimes lost passports. Leaving and returning are part of their metaphysical significance, as highlighted by the following quotes. It is well known that he who returns never left, by Pablo Neruda. Here's some quick sketches trying to capture character and atmosphere of Bologna, but like so many times, and as elucidated brilliantly by Italo Calvino in Invisible Cities, not only the memory and record of cities change while you try to re-envision or to record them, but the places themselves tend to transform into something different. While you try to capture them, like each time under the changing light and sky and atmosphere, bringing forth another variant from an infinite range of possible appearances, images, and identities. Same day and during lunch in Bologna, I drew this Capriccio on this mythical table mat again of tone paper. I believe that this type of paper called katapalia, straw paper, must have, like the ancients believed, a sense of genius loci or some type of inherent invisible songlines guiding my hands through its drawings. I mentioned songlines, which are, for the Australian Aboriginal populations, pieces of the invisible musical geography of the inhabited territory, indicating pathways, boundaries, thresholds, centers, and allowing for orientation and navigation during the journeys through their vast homeland. In my Bologna Capriccio, note also not only the Tausaleni, but the whole city is in movement, dancing and rejoicing, maybe animated by the songlights of a telluric agitation or some sleepless meditation. But here a drawing which shows in reality how I often start my Capricci in my sketchbooks, mostly on square paper, so I can keep my horizontals and verticals so to prevent my buildings from getting too restless and agitated. I do not draw according to a preconceived draft or idea. The drawing just happens by itself. I like to compare my way of sketching to the surrealist technique of écriture automatique, automatic writing, which has nothing to do with automats or robots or spookiness, but maybe with the idea of flow or the inspiration from the music. Sometimes I get stuck in the middle of a drawing or in the middle of a journey, and it may take months or years until I move towards the unknown or approximated destination. Sometimes I forget altogether about the drawing until I find it back in one of my folders or suitcases. Memory is about remembering and forgetting, as a colleague of mine told me. Every drawing is the beginning of a journey, and some journeys will never arrive at destination, or otherwise journeys can be slow and interrupted by pauses, delays, and retreats. Sometimes you advance, and other times you need to retreat. Some journeys, the journey starts always somewhere. It can also start here and arrive somewhere or elsewhere or nowhere. One can arrive at familiar places unknown to us or known places unfamiliar to us. We can arrive in places we thought we knew well and get lost, but relentlessly continue our journey, we may get where imagination and memory go hand in hand, where our hands can settle on the lines, contour, shades, and textures of places of silence, peace, and serenity. Sometimes the drawings cover up unrelated and random written notes. Now these letters and words inhabit the drawing as a home, paving the walls and guides with the whispers and murmurs of their dream. Sometimes we land on an island dedicated to a foreign goddess, an island full of silent prayers, a breeze of eternity, and the quiet rhythm of the landscape. The silence is thick and dense, and we continue our journey. We continuously discover new places along the water and under the full moon, new places which are old, but at the same time surprise us with newness. We have never seen them, but they seem to know us already. And often we think we arrived at our destination, but there was never a destination, and we continue our journey soon after. Let me show you some more pages from my travel journals and sketchbooks. I hope they will be help explaining the mystical and poetical logistic of my Capriccio drawings. They may also highlight both the metaphysical and psychological narratives of the drawing content and the production, their poiesis. My sketches, drawings, and Capricci emerge from a nostalgia, both antique and classic. They participate in an imaginary antiquity, situated in a mythical time, between sky, land, and sea, between dreams, desires, and fictions, like beautiful, discreet, serene, so melancholic fragments of a lost architectural culture, waiting to be revisited and to be rebuilt. Because my Capricci drawings happen while I draw them without preconceived plan and idea, like the automatic writing suggested by the surrealist André Breton, I endeavor finding the hidden narrative and the keys for interpretation a posteriori. Eventually, because sometimes enjoy the drawing in its immediate emotional and poetical nature, which does not require any further rationalization or intellectual translation. I like, however, to observe my imaginary towns and cities with the detachment of a foreign visitor, surprised by the towers and tall chimneys, intrigued by the rocky waterfront, and struck by the full moon and the geography of the sky with wandering and dancing clouds. if I had to list the recurring elements and ingredients of my Capricci drawings, I think I would be able now, after hundreds of drawings, to enumerate their obsessive features, as well as their main components. I will not do it here and leave it to you, dear and patient audience. I also abstain from trying to analyze my Capricci drawings, as I'm certain that, like interpretation of dreams, as I would lose the essence and significance piece by piece while deconstructed it as if it was a mechanical instrument to be repaired. I once asked my very good friend of mine, a psychologist, if he would like to give me some psychological clues for interpretation, but he replied, I rather don't, and I'm happy enough to cherish my drawings like archaeological records from some mysterious foreign continents. My imaginary antiquity is not a historical place or period, indeed, but the continent in itself, an Atlantis between the dawn and the twilight of times past and future. My humble little sketchbooks with their sketches, drawings, and capricci do not endeavor depicting or deciphering the immense wealth and splendor of these imaginary harbors of a mythical and collective memory. They obey only to the intuitions of my hand, following the movement, contours, shades, and rhythm of unknown, so familiar, real and surreal images of places and buildings emerging from the thick fog at Haddad. So the full moon in all its states seems to be almost a constant in my capricci drawings, like in the magnificent Japanese woodcuts. Then there are nights which can also be blessed with a delicate snowstorm, and some nights will be without the moon. My capricci drawings bear witness to a passion and infatuation for architecture and the city, and captured privileged moments of architectural invention and imitation. The culture of memory and imagination, the vindication of intuition, the honing of imitation, the pleasure of copying, the glory of craft, the love of geometry, the genius of place, the rhythm of time, and the music of the imaginary. And also the importance of life, beauty, love, and peace, the integrity of the hand, mind, and heart. Here's some more recent capricci paintings. My later work has become more colorful and exuberant. Snow-tipped mountains appear now in the background. The buildings are more ornate, and the public square is beautifully placed. Sometimes the moon is joined with a group of friendly stars, which brings me to quote from Rumi, a Persian poet from the 13th century. Let the waters settle, and you will see the moon and the stars mirrored in your being. Often the hills and mountains are in the background, but here we arrived at the hill town at the summit of the landscape, close to the moon and to the sky. My capricci drawing encompasses architecture as a part of both a poetic and terrestrial meditation on the very origin, nature, and reason for building good places for virtuous people, città felici, for the good life, and inspiring places, nurturing the buon governo. Here again, the snow-tipped mountains in the background, in the foreground, near the waterfront, the public loggia, and the statue on the step base celebrating the public realm, gateways, towers, campanili, domes. Sometimes the drawings get more insisting on the public architecture and address the dialectics of tectonics and ornament, and trace contrasting skylines as harmonious counterpoints to the silhouette of the landscape. So alluding discreetly to the resilient and obsessive concept of the città ideale, they do not impose an utopian straitjacket on the free-spirited, colorful, and melodious serenity of the more imperfect but far more desirable urbanity of these exquisite places of exile my hand is generously and graciously leading me to. Like a gentle accomplice in discovering, revealing, and exploring unknown places emerging from the pages of my sketchbooks. Sometimes we arrive at islands, often narrow strips of land between river and sea, or two rivers on the background of two snow-tipped mountains, and we have the visit of stars again. And in some nights, the moon is so bright that it seems almost daylight. Maybe this early morning before the sunrise, and the color of the light is limpid and ceremonial, almost festive. Often people ask me, are these real places, or do they come from real precedents? Here what I answer. They may indeed not resemble any existing place, but they resemble the dreams, visions, and beautiful reflections of invisible towns and cities and forgotten hamlets on the mysterious maps of lost explorers, the surveys of anonymous travelers and adventurers, or the written or oral records of shipwrecked sailors and survivors of unfortunate expedition into wild and fascinating regions and geographies of foreign and unrecognized places. Sometimes we are greeted by a blooming tree, and other times the whole landscape is glowing and pulsating with peace and harmony. It is true that the mist of melancholy envelops much of my imaginary places, the absence of people, their full moon nights, the sky filled with dancing and tormented clouds, their seemingly abandoned waterfront piazze, promenade, and eventually the silhouette of with snow-tipped mountain in the background. This melancholy, however, is not a reflection of despair and grief, but of an intense longing and a love for integrity, goodness, peace, and beauty in this fragile world. This intense longing may be reaching for a faraway place because the colors of distance makes them more tangible and desirable. The hand shelters, caresses, imagines these places, brings them forth gently and without violence from an ancestral subconscious, a mystic intuition, or some unconscious labyrinth of exhausted visions by the fortuitous agency of graphite, color, ink, and the complicity and patience of paper of all shades and textures. The hand makes then good its secret and sacred promise to have the mind tuned to the heart and vice versa, and to have reason and feeling embedded in each line of the pencil, in each stroke of the brush. I can draw everywhere. My little poesis laboratory is in my backpack, in my hands, in my heart. It is the hand which shelters the contours, sounds, colors, perfumes, and silhouette of these places which sing and dance, which dream and sing, which cry and laugh, which remember and forget. The hand can also sense their silence and pains, their sleep, restlessness, their harmony and anxiety, their hopes and fears. Only the hand can reveal, uncover, and unpeel the crusty layers of memory by the magical and poetical process of drawing, a healing process of repeating meticulously and patiently the contours, lines and shades of places and moments which have been hidden from reality for reasons as mysterious as tragical. The weathered covers of the sketchbooks enclose and protect both the empty and filled pages and cherish the moods, prayers, murmurs, and whispers of the sketches, notes, drafts, drawings, and paintings in a meditative and stoic resilience, joy, delight, peacefulness, and beauty. Nothing else than love, care, and passion, however, can safely guide the poetical images crafted with our hands, minds, through the tormented journey of permanence and impermanence. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for this poetic journey you have made us run through, Lucien. I think it's been quite inspiring, no? Knowing how your sketches have evolved and how, I mean, I quite like that they have become more colorful, but I also have always enjoyed the more dramatic ones. I really like the idea that it's an imaginary antiquity, because there is something powerful in the invention of the past, in thinking about those golden eras that never existed, because nostalgia, it's a big element to take into consideration and to live with, that also move us, our inspiration and our hearts. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you so much.
Any question from the public before we give space to our next speaker, if he is available?
Available.
You are available, Mr. Serafini. Perfect. Thank you and welcome to the Rome Room.
Thank you. Sorry for being a little bit late. I had an issue with my
okay.
computer.
Those are the problems of direct, of working live. So we did a brief introduction to you before you arrived, but please, we would love to if you present yourself to the audience.
Well, I'm not an architect, so I'm a user of architecture. I work with architects since already 15 years, working as a user, but also as a philosopher and a psychologist. So I founded the International Society of Bio-urbanism that is devoted to find a better way of building cities in a human-centered way. This school has been inspired largely by Nikos Salingaros, by Christopher Alexander, and other authors. And it tries to merge together psychology, neurophysiology, medicine, and a critical vision of society. And my presentation today will be on a different, I would say, attitude. We show a different attitude than what I usually do when I give my presentation, where I focus on these technical aspects. Because 10, 15 years ago, my idea was to go ahead with using a kind of Moloch against another Moloch. So at the time, we had this kind of huge ideologization of architecture, where architects with their modernism wanted to give a specific imprint to our environment. And I thought, okay, a good idea would be to use the Moloch of science against them, to show that it's not a matter of aesthetics, it's a matter of real effects on human beings and society. After these many years, I think the situation has become totally deranged. And if I can start with my presentation, probably I can show what I mean with that.
Yes, please.
So the title of my presentation is Surviving the Future and the Past, because many often in the environment of our friendship, people who are speaking here, we look at the past as a model, but the past is not good by itself, of course. There are something that is eternal in a way, that is present, and we should pay attention not to fall into pitfalls that create a modernity that look at with nostalgia to the past. This first slide shows something that is going on right now. Not to speak about climate change, pollution, war, cities of control, this model that many architects love so much, the so-called smart cities. Smart cities are for dumb citizens. So it's the end of the freedom of citizens, the end of their responsibility in building a city. The first thing I want to stress is what is happening to our human culture. So architecture and urbanism, modernity, helped a lot in destroying our culture. This beautiful book, I don't know if many of you have read it, is a masterpiece, probably the most important document against modernism in urbanism written in the last 50 years. Marwan Saboni is a Syrian architect who survived the 7 years war that torn apart Syria. It's a beautiful country, and showed how this destruction of Syria, the civil war, come out largely from the way the cities have been redesigned after the 50s, following the modernistic ideology. So when cities of classical forms, cities of traditional heritage were destroyed by bombs in order to make a large avenue to allow traffic to get in and split the community into sacks, where the rich are living not anymore with the poor, and the Christians are not anymore living with the Muslim, etc., etc. This book shows it very well. And I remember when I invited Marwan Saboni to Italy, she was traveling through Europe, and many architects were asking what was her impression of Italy. And she said, many people give me the same question when I travel through Europe. And they think that because I'm coming from the destroyed country, I may find this continent, this European Union, to be a kind of paradise. And I have to say, unfortunately, that it's not, because your countryside is empty, your city centers are empty, just filled up with tourists. And I can feel the same kind of danger in the air that I was feeling in my country before, because you kill the cities. Cities are not there anymore. And in this sense, I want to quote a famous author, Guy Debord. I read all his works, but I didn't know this text. That was actually the text of a movie, a terrible movie to watch because it's very boring, but the text is very interesting. And let me read you just a few lines from it. The Paris of that time, within the confines of its 20 districts, was never entirely asleep. Its inhabitants had not yet been driven out and dispersed. They were not content to subsist on images. When they lived in their own city, no one would have dared to make them eat or drink the sort of products that the chemistry of adulteration had not yet dared to invent. The houses in the center were not yet deserted or resold to cinema spectators born elsewhere. The modern commodity system had not yet fully demonstrated what can be done to a street. The city planners had not yet forced anyone to travel far away to sleep. Governmental corruption had not yet darkened the clear sky with the artificial fog of pollution, which now permanently blankets the mechanical circulation of things in this veil of desolation. The trees were not yet dread from suffocation. The stars were not yet extinguished by the progress of alienation. Liars were in power, as always, but economic development had not yet given them the means to lie about everything. One would have been as astonished then to find printed on built in Paris all the books that have since been composed of cement and asbestos, and all the buildings that have since been built out of dull sophisms. These lines were written in 1978, and it speaks loud about the destruction of Paris, the city that he says was the most happy, the most beautiful in Europe. A city that was a place of enjoyment and of human realization. One wonders what has happened to the city. And probably everybody knows Besima Kim's work. It's a masterpiece, milestone, I think, in our studies. Besima Kim devoted his life to understand why the ancient cities and even the little towns are so delicious, so attractive to us. We all are enticed by the beauty of this place. He asked himself why they are so enticing, why they are so beautiful. And he found out these ancient rules that allowed people to build that kind of shapes, that kind of walls, that kinds of forms that we find so exciting, so beautiful. The root of what Besima Kim teaches is that the beauty of a city is a moral beauty, is a social beauty that takes a form that we interpret as beautiful. But the beautiful is touching us because it's talking about something inside us, and especially in the way we relate to each other. There are many examples. We don't have time because I have only 10 minutes, but it shows how the way of building was based on the respect of others, and how this respect was enhanced by multiple relations between the neighbors. Marwa Saboni has published another book just a couple of years ago, Building for All. Here she resorts to the traditions of her country and to the wisdom of a Muslim way of building. That was based, of course, on a religious view of the world and on an ethical view of the world. And next to it, I put another book by Professor Sergio Los, who's the Italian father of the way of building the cities respecting nature. He made a very interesting book, it's bilingual, it's in Italian and English, Cities and Landscapes as Symbolic Systems, where he shows how the extension of our mind, or our way of socializing, our social body is the landscape. The landscape allows us to get in touch with each other and with ourselves. When we make the landscape, we make ourselves. We just stop doing that as citizens. We don't take care anymore of the landscape because we don't make agriculture anymore in the so-called first world. We just live in a city that is not anymore a city because it has not anymore its internal organs. The city, like an organism, should have its own organs inside itself. It doesn't anymore because the city now managed to have food from elsewhere, and so people don't care about the quality of the air and the soil where they live because food comes from nobody knows where. They consume energy that is produced elsewhere. Even the rules and the laws that govern the city comes from elsewhere. So this organism has exploded. And he proposes a way of rebuilding these organisms in order to have, again, a possibility of making ourselves as human beings. Building for Hope by Marwa Zaboni put things very similar. She says we need to build again a city that allows us to be happy. And the city has a big role in that because we are social humans, social animals, and we need connection with the others. This is a kind of a model of a modern city. Since 1920, 1930s, we are looking at this stuff. This is a famous model by Le Corbusier, La Cité Radieuse. I want to talk a little about La Ville Heureuse. It's the happy city. This is again just a little image from Paris, the Paris that Guillemot was talking about. Probably not so rich like it used to be at the time of Le Corbusier, but it's so much beautiful, so much alive, and you can tell there is life. There's this quality that Christopher Alexander speaks about throughout these books. Then I want to speak about La Ville Amoureuse, the loving city. Marwa Zaboni speaks about the fact that all the Middle Eastern towns used to plant trees that produce fruits for people to eat if they need it. To have fountains in order that people can drink for free. They can have shade for free. They are welcomed by the city. In Italy, we have the famous city of Siena. Has a beautiful inscription at the entrance of the town. It says that the city of Siena opens its heart to the people coming, exactly as this door opened to their bodies. So the city must be a place of welcoming that accept, include, and teaches a language. This teaching is fundamental. A city teaches people how to live together through architecture. Architecture is not just an abstraction, a language that is in the mind of the architect based on ideas. It's something very physical, made by people who are not architects, because most of the architecture we see are not being built by architects, but it works following the same rules that Bézille McKeeb has shown us. And then La Ville Méditative. I took this picture from the very north of Russia, where you can see a monastery. This environment is very cold. The monks pray and spend their life meditating about God. And that's an aspect that we are totally lost in our cities. There is no space even for meditation. You're finding the calmness and the silence that allow us to understand that we are part of something bigger than what we are. I don't want to preach anybody, of course, but I want to stress the urgency of totally changing our way and how we can do that. Once you don't preach priests and you don't teach architecture to architects, but my point is that we are doing something that is very risky. I just remember to close my presentation, an event that happened to me 1 year ago. Some very good friends, very good architects are in the line of our gathering, proposing me to participate in a very interesting contest. So we had to design a city that was totally inclusive of different culture, was human-centered, and was a bio-urban city. The little details that the city was to be built on the North Pole, practically, northern Sweden. It was an extraction center where they needed to attract people from the south of the world to come to work in the city, in a very inhospitable natural environment, in order to fill the gap of workers that didn't want to work there. Swedish people didn't want to work in such a bad place. So they say, okay, if we build a beautiful town with, all the characteristic of what could be called a bio-urban city, then maybe it will be more easy to find these slaves from the south of the world to come to work here. They say, if we do a thing like that, we are just prostituting ourselves, our knowledge, our philosophy, etc., to the same very system that destroyed our cities. So we shouldn't do that. I refused to do that. My friends kept going, unfortunately. I respect their choice, but I think we had to start understanding that it's not just about making theory, it's a matter of practice, because cities have been destroyed not by architects themselves. The architects have been the arms of political interest, economic interest, etc. But if they were not saying no to many things, probably the world would be better. That's it. Now, this is the view from my window. I decided to move to a little town in Italy outside the big cities that is already destroyed, and I can tell you I find a lot of happiness here.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mr. Serafini, for this wonderful lecture. I think it's somehow it's a hard lecture because it's a warning for everyone to realize that we are killing our cities, as you are pointing very rightly. And without life, our cities become just a theme park. And we are all converting all of them into that, whether you go to Italy, Germany, Paris, of course, Spain, London, you can see that everyone is protesting now against that because tourism has eaten the cities, and therefore it's preventing everyone to enjoy the urban fabric and to live the urban fabric, which, as you point out, it's one of the most important things of the urban life and what makes our cities special. I mean, I have loved what you have mentioned about the city should provide food to eat, shelter, and water for free for no one to ask. The trees disappeared quickly, or they might not be easy to have, but the water is something that is disappearing from many cities. Just something as the
There's a basic concept that the city has become a kind of huge control tool. That's also very important. Now in London, it's pretty common to have cameras that take your face, you know.
Yeah.
And the concept of smart city is very dangerous. But of course, nobody can stop this process as an individual. It's a matter of a social reaction to this, and it's not a matter of aesthetics. And aesthetics also is a contemporary, is a modern concept. Modernistic philosophy is about that. Not they thought to make something beautiful according to their concept. We can discuss about that, what is beauty, but it's just sterile polemics. It's about survival of the species. We are destroying our culture that allowed us to survive for thousands of years. And the most dangerous thing is that this change of culture happens on a global level. So if something goes wrong, it will be wrong for everybody. So it's really extremely dangerous. And the situation in which we live now, we are at the border of World War III. In this moment, I read just before entering that there are rockets flying towards Israel from Iran, etc., etc. So we know the situation is really, really hot. But it's not just because God sent this to us, it's because we did it. And architecture is part of it. The book by Marwan Saboni is really impressive, really, really recommended, because it shows how war doesn't come from Mars. War comes from mistakes that have been done to our society. And architecture, the way of building, the way we are together, has a big role in this. The problem is that, of course, I cannot ask Pablo Alvarez to design better, you know, because he does what he can. The problem is that he cannot say no to certain orders, to certain companies asking for certain products, etc. The market is what it is. So the question is, what should we do? It's not, theory is not enough. That's for sure. And to me, this is very urgent. I think we need to build for peace. We need to build for human culture. We need to build in a way that will provide, you know, new ideas in that sense for the new generation, for the citizens of tomorrow that are growing right now in our cities.
Thank you. We have a question from Mr. Salingaros.
It is just a comment. I want to say I was deeply moved by Lucien's and Stefano's presentation more than anything else in the 2 days of the conference so far. I'm prejudiced because they're my longtime friends. But I want to mention that I met them more than 20 years ago. And all of us were interested in human cities, in trying to stop the destruction of humanity through ugly, inhuman cities. And we have each been fighting towards this goal. But we, all three of us, underestimated the power of the destructive evil that drives the inhumanity of cities. And the solutions that Lucien and Stefano referred to, we had those 30 years ago. And it is just that humanity is not interested in creating a living world, a world of beauty, a world of compassion for human beings. That's totally romantic. So we each of us continue to do what we can. And you see, Lucien describes the world of beauty through his poetry in order to preserve his own gift for creation. Stefano attaches the solution to nature, the Institute of Bio-urbanism. If someone wishes to listen to these solutions for humanity, we could be saved. If the big powers do not listen to these solutions, then it's not a very optimistic future. But thank you, my dear friends, Lucien and Stefano, for your presentations.
There is a question about Christopher Alexander. I don't know if I should answer now.
I mean, do you want to comment something about, or both Lucien and you, do you want to comment something about Mr. Salingaro's comment? If not, we can jump onto the questions.
Nikos is always very gentle, and he's a great master, so he opened the way to many discussion in the subject. He introduced me to study architecture because I'm not an architect, so it's because of him. Actually, I remember just by chance, it happened to me to have some proofs of his book, Italian book that he was to publish in a few days in Italy, and I read it avidly. I said, it's beautiful, but who translated your book? The Italian is terrible. And he said, I translated myself. So I spent 2 nights to correct it. And then he was thankful and sent me as a gift for Christmas 4 volumes by Christopher Alexander on the nature of order. And I fell in love with that because it was like a strike. Because I was studying at the time 2 things: the concept of intentionality, Renaissance Thomistic thinking was about form, and biology of forms, with some geneticists. One was Antonio Lima de Faria. And I found that the images in those books by Christopher Alexander were exactly the same thing I was studying when connecting different shapes in biology. Antonio Lima de Faria has just died a few months ago, at the age of 103. Actually, I published his last paper just 2 weeks ago. Bright mind working until the end. As a candle, he died like a candle, giving light. This guy attacked the main vision of Darwinism. That's saying that everything depends, every form, every shape in nature depends on selection, natural selection. I would say not. The form of biology that we see, the rules that determine certain forms of biology depends on physics and chemistry. So there are laws that are before biology. And in nature, we always find order. And he was giving beautiful example. For example, if you see a tree, shape of a tree, or you see the shape of a river from above, you will see the same kind of pattern. And this pattern is because there is something more light passing through something more heavy, to put it simple. There are many studies about that, also in biology, of course. And he was finding order at the atomic level, into the genes, for example. He's the father of genetics, of a specific section of genetics that works on the cells. And I was struck by that. So I realized there was a continuity between nature and culture also, and this is pretty visible in the way cities and design are made by us. And that's how Bio-urbanism started, practically putting together the law of nature with the law of design. And it was very interesting. It was a very beautiful journey. This for answering quickly to the first question. The second question is about biological reason for us as a species to live in cities. I don't think it's greed. That's a myth. The same as the Darwinian myth. Human beings are social. You know, very famous, they say Homo homini lupus. Well, I found in a philosopher of the 13th century from Naples, Thomas Aquinas, this phrase says Homo hominis naturaliter amicus. So the man is by nature friend to the other man. It's a different vision of the world. And here I go back to the Mediterranean wisdom by Bezimakin. The Mediterranean wisdom of the Mediterranean urbanism is exactly what we're talking about. Mine is not a kind of nostalgia for the past, for my culture, etc., etc. I know that Mediterranean culture is evaporating, is getting destroyed, but I think it still preserves some precious gold that we can reinvent, restart using. But we have to get rid of certain mythology. One of them is exactly the idea that greed rules everything. No, love rules everything. Even greed is a form of love. Is a wrong form of love, in the sense that the person who is greed doesn't know that that stuff is not producing happiness. It goes for that. It's a psychopathology. Yeah, cities are a social construct, of course. The problem is now the social construct then becomes a meme and then a goal in itself. So it becomes a kind of machine. The same can be told about language, the same can be told about many things. But the problem is that we can get back to that source, the internal source. And there, Christopher Alexander is very important. He was saying you have to go back to find that quality without a name that makes your work of design really a masterpiece. It's not about an external viewer who appreciates it, something that comes from inside yourself. You know that you feel good there. You know that you're doing something really good. And people living in certain cities know that their city is beautiful. Yeah, we don't know our neighbors because we don't live in cities, in fact. These are not cities anymore, they're towns. In Italy, it's been pretty evident with the COVID-19. So we had this explosion of whatever. And our beautiful cities were like, you know, top models in a morgue. So you could see the beautiful square of Piazza di Spagna, Piazza Navona, these beautiful city centers, totally empty, with no one citizen. Not because of the lockout, but because there were no tourists. When tourists disappeared, the city centers of Italy become just boxes because there is no more life. And even here, I live in a little town where people more or less know each other. Even here, people suffer a lot of solitude because there is no anymore a real relationship. Architecture is not enough to solve this issue, but it's part of the problem. There is a lot of solitude. People is not able anymore to love. It's not anymore to be loved, to be recognized, to talk, to build a language together. That's what we need to do. Architecture should be built by people, together with the architects. In my idea, the bio-urbanist or bio-architect should be able to build with the people, not to teach them, but to be a tool to help them to build a real world that can educate people to create again a language of civilization. I'm talking too much.
Not at all. We are enjoying a lot sharing all this information with you, and also it's quite important that we have a debate. It's not only just you coming and talking your speech, but also interacting with the public. I think we have another question from Anami.
Yeah, it's about privacy. The right to privacy. That's absolutely true, but you have that you can enjoy that kind of privacy if you have a relationship also with others. Otherwise, the problem is when there is only privacy. You know what I mean? In a village, in fact, you can miss this privacy, not because everybody knows each other. But also that is true until a certain point nowadays, because I say very often, we don't live in this place, we don't live in Rome, New York, or we live on the flatland of the internet. Most of our time is spent, in these little boxes, etc. So it doesn't matter if you live in a city, a big city, a small city, in a way. The problem is that when you need a real contact, not through a screen, not through an interface, then it's painful. I know many people in their 30, 35, and they feel alone everywhere. They suffer this because one of the reasons why in the West we don't get married and we don't have children is because we don't trust anybody. We cannot trust anymore. We don't have a language in order to understand if this person is trustable or not, generally speaking. And that's a tragedy. That's a tragedy. That's why we don't have children. Italy now is a top record. I mean, beautiful Italy. You are all architects, so you know the architecture of Italy. It's beautiful landscapes, etc., etc. Exactly here, people don't have children. And the reason is not money, because Italians are rich. The reason is that life sucks. There is no an option of future. There is no connection to each other. There is no trust. You cannot make love to someone. You can have sex maybe with someone. You cannot make love to someone you don't trust. So we have lost the fundamentals. And architecture can help in this. I don't know how. You are beautiful minds, excellent architects. So I think you can find solution for that. Maybe not alone. Maybe you need to work with others, etc. But it's very interesting. In the book, I show it by Sergio Loss. I see this landscape as symbolic systems. That's put down very interesting nails. I would really recommend that, as I did with the book by Marwan Saponi.
Pablo, Anami has a question.
Yes, Anami has a question.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentations. It's been so fascinating, so thank you again. So maybe this is a slight tangent, and this is a question not just for the presenters, but perhaps for the whole room as well, generally. So the term healthy cities and this term, the Healthy City Initiative, which we see being talked about more and more, especially in global health and global development. For example, the World Health Organization and other organizations like the World Bank, their focus is very much on physical health, environmental health, and now there's more focus slowly starting with brain health and mental well-being. So my question is, in your perspectives, which points are being overlooked by these healthy city movements for healthy cities? And I mentioned these organizations like the World Bank, the WHO, and the correlating sectors and advocates who try to work alongside these organizations, because they very much try to work on influencing policy and legislative decisions. So I ask, from your views, what points are being overlooked or even completely missed when it comes to bridging these well-being and then the world of architecture and the conversations that we're having today? Is it the role of craftsmen? Are there other points which are being overlooked? And I know this could be a heavy question that could lead to hours of discussion, but I wanted to ask it nonetheless.
It's a beautiful question. Can I answer?
Please.
Yes, of course.
It's a beautiful question because it comes to me the idea that I will, according to this organization, I can die perfectly healthy and very unhappy. So the subject of happiness has been also addressed by these people, but it's a kind of happiness where you have to smile like this in any situation. They talk about resilience in a way. Resilience is the way of adapting to something, excuse me the term, shitty. So you have a shitty society, a shitty economy, but you are resilient, so you swallow everything. We have to pay attention also to this medicalization of society. I want the right to die without being healthy. You know what I mean? It's not so important. We are gonna die, all of us. The point is how you die. It doesn't make a big difference if you die when you are healthy, and if you die when you are sick. The point is if your life has a meaning, if you left happiness on this planet, if you handed over something that is makes you feel that you accomplished something. And nobody can address this because the World Bank doesn't care about this. The World Health Organization doesn't care about this. They are bureaucrats. They do their job. To get their money. That's it. Again, our society, our cities, so our society are selecting kind of psychopaths everywhere. Look at our politicians all over the world. You come from different countries. Everywhere, in every country, politicians are the worst. I mean, they were supposed to be the best. wherever you go, you find psychopaths, because these kind of societies select the worst. The greed, we select the greed. So we prize the person who is a billionaire. A billionaire is a moron, excuse me. Why you need to spend your life to get all that money? For doing what? I mean, these are the fundamentals we are in a way losing, and we are bombarded every single day, every single moment. We are connected and educated, and even architecture teaches us with these beautiful skyscrapers that you must be powerful and tower over the others, etc., instead of getting in touch and that and love the others. But this has nothing to do with a specific religion or ideology. It's a common sense throughout every culture, throughout the planet. They always have been having this. So this factor of health is true. In the Christian tradition, health was translated rather holiness, being holy. You are holy because you follow something that accomplish your soul, make you happy inside. And so you radiate happiness, and you die very well. You eventually go to heaven, but heaven may be just this status of being a real human being that accomplishes journey in this world. It's not like that. Now we are even ready to kill someone else in order to protect our properties and these little stupid things. So it's a very important question, because this is like greenwashing. When they say, okay, let's put some plant on the top of the skyscrapers, and so this will be very green. It will be very protecting the environment. I mean, by building a skyscraper, you are destroying the environment, but you put on the top, you put a tree to show that you are green. The same thing when they talk about health, but they want to control your life. They want you to consume industrial products, etc., etc. What are we talking about? So the health of a body.
Thank you.
May I add something maybe to that? Because the definition for health on the World Health Organization is the state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. And this is, of course, an absolutely idealistic, unreachable state. I mean, we're all human beings, right? And I think if we would think about like the World Bank or the World Health Organization setting up a program, we want to make our cities now like super healthy and social. I think a big problem is the metrics, because what are the metrics they're measuring this in, or the success of that in? If it is just going to end up be a thing like, okay, you need like 5 square meters of public parks in like 5 minutes around the place of residence of an urban dweller. I mean, it doesn't really talk about any like local specifics. I mean, like how these spaces are designed, but you can't normally put this kind of stuff into metrics that would be relevant to these organizations, if you can follow my train of thought. So I think this is not a way on how to approach it.
Yeah, thank you, Imo. And I think I asked that question as a precursor to, I have one more point if I may bring it up. Mr. Serafini, you mentioned something about not staying in the knowledge sphere and moving more into implementation and action. And the reason I use this question almost as a precursor is because in other sectors as well, not just global health, but generally, there's always this knowledge to implementation gap and these idealistic goals, but then how do we shift into the implementation gap? And Imo, as you said, I think in some of these spaces, they are trying to figure out a framework, but again, there's a gap and it requires different types of people from different backgrounds, different sectors, especially like the people here today, to work on something like that. So then my question now is, with keeping knowledge to implementation, understanding the gap that we have, as Mr. Serafini alluded to earlier, even in that process, as we move to implementation and being more proactive and, implementing the ideas that we have, which people, which perspectives, which things, if there's 3 things that are specifically being overlooked, and that could be frustrating, that you feel like these same things keep being overlooked. So is it the craftsman? Is it other things? What are those pieces? What are those missing pieces? That's what I'm trying to pick everyone's brains about. But again, I know this is a heavy question and it could take another few hours to just unpack that.
Yes, and unfortunately, we need to, well, fortunately, unfortunately, we thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. It's been very interesting, quite insightful, and thank you very much for everyone to contribute to this debate, which is it's necessary to have. And someone was asking before about what can you do as individual. Well, as individual, there are things that you can do. There are more starting, for example, with many cities have now initiatives against all this gentrification and touristification of the city. We all live in the European countries, we all live in democracies. We can oppose to our horrible politicians, and sometimes we will win. So never give up, and always move to your city and work together with your community. You will get surprised. Yes, as Mr. Serafini was saying, we live lonely. Maybe I am an optimistic, but there is always a community there of lonely people wanting to stay together and finding a common purpose. So thank you very much for being with us in the room.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yes.
I may ask. I think it even starts on an even more basic level than getting organized. I think it just starts about talking to other people about that subject, about our built environment, especially people who are not architects or urban planners or, like look at this stuff daily, because a lot of people feel that pain and they feel really the loss of any, like identification with their environment, but they don't have the vocabulary or the frame to think about it because nobody is talking about that. Everybody feels it, but nobody is like really talking about it except maybe us. And now it's getting a little more, but the dialogue first between our friends and families about these topics, I think this is the place to start. And then, of course, getting organized. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's right, Mr. Borges. That's the space to do it. And with this insightful reflection that we are all together in this, and that's why we organize events like this. That's why at the end of the day, yeah, the mobile phone can be our condemnation and our something that it's taking us out of reality, but we should also use it as a way to reconnect with reality, even if that makes a sort of irony. And with this, we are moving back to the main room.
Or do we want to give Professor Salingaros the space for the closing comment?
Yes, please.
Sorry.
I have a warning.
I have a warning to wrap up and close the session.
Yes, I have a warning from Anami. Anami, the World Bank finances skyscrapers, destroys our cities, destroys lives. They're not the people you want to trust. They're the ones responsible for destroying human life for the earth. Don't trust them.
No, I don't. I don't trust them, and I acknowledge that it's more about building the bridges and working with who we have to work with, even if you don't want to. It's that's another angle that I'm thinking of. But I mentioned the World Bank because there's a lot of public health financing and stuff related to it. That's why
the World Bank is as we speak hiring the worst possible inhuman architects, and are going to present them as the ones who are going to build the solution to efficient cities. Beware. It's going to get even worse than what we have now.
I saw that. Thank you.
Okay, do we want to end on a positive note?
No, I mean we need to live with that balance between positivity and realism. At the end of the day, we can imagine a bright future, but we also need to play with what we have. Although it is good, as Mr. Steil has been saying, to imagine an antiquity or imagine a golden era that never existed, but perhaps will exist. So thank you very much for attending this break room. Please, to the organizer, let's move back us to the main room for the final words and reflection from Dr. Buras. Thank you very much.